Okay, so welcome to the final part of chapter 8, and it's gonna be my favorite theory to talk about. Okay, so we do know that most countries, when they print money, right, it leads to high levels of inflation. But why is that the case? Okay, well, this theory actually going to be looking at is the quantity theory of money, and it basically explains why when countries print a whole lot of money, it leads to high levels of inflation. For example, we had in Zimbabwe. So the quantity theory of money is a theory that an increase in the quantity of money or a certain percentage increase in the quantity of money will bring about the same and equal percentage increase in the price level. Okay, so if money supply increases by, let's say, 10%, okay, the price level will also increase by 10%. Now remember, the price level basically helps us in calculating inflation. Okay, so if money supply increases by 10%, basically the inflation rate also jumps by 10%. Okay, right, so that is the quantity theory of money. And now we'll build the quantity theory of money. Okay, so why does it say that an increase in the quantity of money brings about an equal increase in the price level? Okay, now the quantity theory of money is what is based on something we call the velocity of circulation and eventually the equation of exchange. Okay, so when we say the velocity of circulation is how many times does the average dollar bill get used in a year. Okay, so if you take a dollar bill, right, from your pocket or from wherever, how many times does that dollar bill travel around the economy in 1 year? Okay, so you exchange the dollar bill for something and someone will use that dollar bill to exchange for something. How many times does it go to people within a year? How many people actually touch it? That is the velocity of circulation. And using the velocity of circulation, we can find what we call the equation of exchange. Okay, so the velocity of circulation is the average number of times a dollar bill is used to purchase goods and services in terms of GDP. Okay, so that is the velocity of circulation. How many times does an average dollar bill basically travel around the economy or travel in the economy in a year? Okay, so now we can actually write an equation. We can say that the velocity of money is V for velocity. We can say the price level is basically P for price. We will look at real GDP, which is basically Y. Okay, we already know GDP is Y. And then the quantity of money is M. Okay, so from there, economists came up with the equation that the velocity of money, how many times an average dollar bill, right, moves around the economy, depends on price level times real GDP divided by the money supply. Okay, so how many times money basically travels around the economy depends on the price level times real GDP divided by money supply. As you notice, okay, this P times Y is also nominal GDP. Okay, so P times Y, because we've actually accounted for prices now in real GDP, is also nominal GDP. Okay, so now I can rewrite this equation as V equals P times Y all divided by M. Okay, suppose I want to solve for nominal GDP. All I have to do is multiply the velocity of money, how many times an average dollar is basically used in the economy, times the amount of money in the economy. So then we have V times M equals P times Y. Okay, and now this is a powerful equation known as the equation of exchange, okay, known as the equation of exchange. The equation of exchange basically says that M times V should equal P times Y. Okay, so basically we're trying to see how money supply and the velocity of money basically affects nominal GDP in the economy, or basically the price level and real GDP in the economy. Okay, right, now suppose that V is constant. The velocity of money basically over time is constant and does not change. And suppose that the growth rate in GDP over time does not really change. Then we can say that if V and Y are fixed, an increase in M will lead to the same monetary or the same amount of increase in basically P. Okay, so an increase in M will lead to the same amount of increase in P. Okay, so the equation of exchange becomes the quantity theory of money if M, right, does not influence V or Y. Okay, so M basically influences only P. Okay, so in the long run, that is after a long period, change in P is equally proportional to the change in M, because you assume that V and Y are both fixed. Okay, you assume that V and Y essentially are both fixed. Okay, right, so if the money supply in the economy basically changes, the price level is also going to change. Okay, supposing that V and Y tend to be constant. And we can basically express the equation of exchange in growth rates. Okay, we can say that the money growth rate, the money supply growth rate, plus the rate of velocity change, which is the velocity rate, should equal the inflation rate plus real GDP growth rate. Okay, and we can rearrange this to actually solve for inflation rate. Okay, so we can say that the inflation rate in the economy depends on the money growth rate, right, the rate of velocity change, and the real GDP growth. Okay, also we know that in the long run velocity does not change, so we can say that this is equal to 0, right? Therefore, inflation rate is determined by the money growth rate and the real GDP growth. Okay, economists have found that the growth rate of real GDP rarely changes, and this is also normally equal to 0, right? So the money growth rate is the only thing that actually influences the inflation rate. Okay, the money growth rate is the only thing that basically influences the inflation rate. Okay, so as a country prints more money, it tends to have high bouts of inflation. Okay, it tends to have high bouts of inflation. Okay, right? Or if the inflation or if the money growth rate is higher than GDP growth, okay, inflation tends to be really high. So for example, if this is 10% and this is only, let's say, 1%, well, inflation in the country is going to be predicted to be 9%. Okay, so the main thing that actually drives inflation is going to be the money growth rate, and that is, ladies and gentlemen, my favorite theory in economics, the quantity theory of money. Okay, the quantity theory of money. Okay, so that's where we end this chapter. If you have any questions, please don't hesitate to ask me. Okay, thank you very much, and I will see you guys again in the next video.